Hello, everyone, and welcome back to College Football Corner. Kevin Walsh and Jersey Joe Archino here again. Going to be giving you these every single week of the college football season. And what a terrific week one we had. Some big marquee matchups, and it all started off with 15 versus 3, Houston versus Oklahoma. Houston getting a big-time win, really catapulted them in the AP rankings. They moved up to 6. Oklahoma drops back. What do you take away from this game?
Well, first off, Kevin, it's so good to be back. I always say, and I talked about you with this, some corners, they come and go. But college football corner, that's something that will last forever. But I think the best way to kind of characterize that game is Houston football is on the rise. We talked so much last season about Tom Herman. His team won 13 games last season. What he did with Ohio State, he was a mastermind. He puts his players in such good positions all the time to win. And against Oklahoma, a number 3 ranked team going into the season, taking care of business.
And one thing that really works well for Herman is his quarterback, Greg Ward Jr., 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. Is he someone that might be a sneaky Heisman candidate?
You know, I think you have to love Greg Ward Jr., especially when you have a guy like Tom Herman working with him, developing him. It's one of those things where coming into the season, Tom Herman was very adamant that he needed to become a better vocal leader, and that is exactly what he did. And you could just see with the type of leadership he showed on the sidelines, the way he was leading his team, and they never really faltered in this game. This is a game against a very good Oklahoma team, very well coached, that could have gotten away at any time, but it didn't. And I think the leadership of Greg Ward Jr., combined with the way he's becoming a better passer, is just making this whole Houston football team become better acclimated to win on a consistent basis.
Now, Oklahoma, on the losing end of this game, a team that was in last year's college football playoff, big expectations for them, ranked 3 in the AP poll. Taking this loss, what went wrong for this team? Are they going to be able to fix this? How do they bounce back?
Well, Kevin, I know you weren't the biggest fan of them getting into the playoff last season, and neither was I. And I think when you look at Oklahoma last season, they were on the very beneficial side of almost all the matchups they got. When they played TCU, when they played all their top-tier opponents up against Baylor, they always seemed to catch a break where they weren't playing the team's best quarterback, or there was an injury, a setback on that other team. And I think when you finally saw them go up against a top-tier team like a Clemson blew the doors off of them. And Bob Stoops, obviously the head coach for Oklahoma, he's been going there strong for a while now. I just don't know if his team has the mental toughness and the mental fortitude to go up against some of these top-tier guys. Obviously, they got ranked where they are because they have a top-tier quarterback, they have a top-tier coach. But when it's all said and done, if you don't have that mental toughness, which they didn't show in a game against Houston, you're not going to go very far this season.
Baker Mayfield, obviously someone that's going to be a Heisman candidate. Another Heisman candidate whose week one was a bit underwhelming, Leonard Fournette, but it wasn't just him. LSU really disappoints. They play unranked Wisconsin now. They beat LSU, moved up to 10, but LSU was 5 coming into this season. This looked like the year where Les Miles was going to get the job done. They lose 16-14. The offense was very unimpressive. Is this going to be a season-long problem for LSU, or was it just a bumpy week one?
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things I think I'm surprised LSU lost, but I'm not surprised how they lost that game. This is the same problem we've been seeing for years. Obviously, Leonard Fournette is the stud guy there, and when he struggles to get going, that whole team struggles to facilitate everything that they want to do. What it does come down to them the most, though, is at the quarterback position. This is a team that has maybe the best skilled position players at receiver, at almost all the key areas. Where they lack the talent, though, and where it matters most is at quarterback. Brandon Harris Jr. just showed that weak mental mindset last season. This season, after game one, he looks as rattled can come. And if you don't have that guy with that mental toughness, that's not going to carry over to the rest of your team. And you just see how difficult it is for them to get the ball even anywhere down to 20 yards, down to 30 yards. If Leonard Fournette doesn't get going, LSU's offense is a complete disaster.
Fournette finishes with a total of 176 yards out of the 257 that this team had. But like you said, he can't do it himself. So if you're Les Miles, you're in his position, are you making the call? Are you pulling Brandon Harris? Or do you think maybe he can bounce back? What is the move that you're going to move? How would you move forward if you're LSU?
I heard Todd McShay talk about this the other day, and I'm in full agreement with him. I think you have to pull the plug on Brandon Harris. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it early now when you've still got some time to go on, because yes, your first match against Wisconsin, it's a difficult matchup, but it's not the most difficult. And if you have struggled that much against them, what's going to happen when you get into the meat of your schedule against Alabama and all these other top-tier SEC teams? So I think if you're going to do it and pull the plug on your quarterback, you do it now. You just get these kind of difficult ones. You grind them out and see what you've got. But it's very easy to see that Brandon Harris isn't the guy. He hasn't been the guy, and they're going nowhere with him, so just pull the plug.
Well, now we'll go from a guy who isn't the guy to a guy who is certainly the guy, the Heisman favorite. Deshaun Watson last year was in the national championship, a runner-up for the actual Heisman Award. Not his best week one, but still does enough to get the job done as Clemson tops Auburn. What were your takeaway from Clemson's performance?
Yeah, I think you look at that game, week one, that's a difficult first game to have to go and travel and play an SEC team like Auburn. Wasn't the most pretty for Deshaun Watson, but it's one of those things where sometimes when you're a quarterback like he is, you just want to see that he's able to gut out a win. And that's a game there where Auburn's defense looks much, much better, and Deshaun Watson just rallies his guys down the field when they really need to and gets the job done. Obviously, Dabo Swinney's got a lot of pressure on him, but it's good for Clemson to get this out of the way early. And I always say this, I'd rather be tested early in my schedule and then be able to kind of compose myself where I get onto the later half. Because when you look at Clemson, they're going to match up against Florida State maybe in 6 to 8 weeks' time. So get all the difficulties out of the way now, and I think Dabo Swinney's club showed a pretty good sighting for their first game.
Dabo passes the test. Gus Malzahn, not so much. 3 different quarterbacks. It really didn't seem like there was much of a plan. How does Auburn move forward, and how do you feel about his job security for the rest of this season?
Yeah, I've been on this show, and I've always given so much respect to Gus Malzahn, and I really do think he deserves a lot of credit for turning that program around. But you have to look and just ask the question, is this offense continuing to regress under him? We've anointed him easily the best offensive mind in college football, but I'm not sure if he's living up to that reputation. This is 2 seasons in a row now where it looks like the offense is going to regress. He named Sean White the starter, so he'll be the guy moving forward, but it just comes down to that question of if you really have to play if you don't even let quarterbacks finish a drive, well, that tells me a lot about the confidence you have in your guys there. And for an offensive mind like that to struggle running the football and for his quarterback to not be able to run or not be able to get effective passes, well, Auburn can't win without a good offense. And right now, their offense just doesn't look very good.
Quarterback problems for Auburn. No more quarterback problems for Texas. The true freshman Shane Buechele looks terrific. Plus, their running quarterback in Tyrone Supes. They have a really dangerous, dynamic duo over there in Texas as they get the big upset victory over Notre Dame, who came in 10th ranked, who looked pretty good, Notre Dame, but obviously defense, they were torn apart by Texas. Texas, is this team legit?
Look, I want to stand up and scream, finally, Texas has a quarterback. It feels like so long since we've seen Colt McCoy there really bringing Texas. And it's one of those things where Texas football, when Texas football is good, it's good for all of college football. It's one of those marquee programs that has national appeal everywhere. And when they're prominent and they're in the limelight, everyone wins. And I think this is exactly what you're seeing. Defensively, we know what Charlie Strong's always going to bring to the table. And you're kind of starting to see that finally his vision is taking shape. And what it all does come down to, and it's the formula we've talked about in almost every game so far, is if you don't have that quarterback, you're not going to do much. But it finally seems like Shane Buechele, for a young guy like that, to just take command like he did, have that cannon arm, like, oh my God. Texas has a quarterback. They have a good defense. They have a very strong head coach. I would say undoubtedly, based on that first win, they're back in the limelight.
A strong head coach. I see what you did there. Now, for Notre Dame, they had a quarterback battle carry into week one that was clearly locked up with Deshaun Kaiser's performance. A lot of people feel like if he played the whole game, Notre Dame would have came out victorious here. But Kaiser, 6 total touchdowns. We're a pair of guys that also love the draft. How good can this kid be? I mean, are we talking Heisman, top 5 pick? What did you see from Kaiser week one? Yeah,
Kaiser is starting to be one of those guys where I think when we're talking about drafts coming up, his name is going to be right there. I mean, when you look at the way that he has himself composed, the thing I like the most about him is the speed that he plays at. I mean, when Malik Zaire got in for those small opportunities that he actually did, you could just see very easily that the speed of which they played just showed how much faster that a guy that Kaiser is able to recognize the game. The way his passes are just more crisp. it took a little while for Brian Kelly to actually name him the official starter, but I don't think it was a surprise to any of us. You could just tell very easily that he's got a perfect position for this team. And look, when it's all said and done, if Texas is what we think they might be, I don't know if this loss is going to be one that's going to be detrimental to Notre Dame. It was just a great, really well-played football game against two marquee programs, and it's what it should be.
Now, we finished out the first college football weekend on Monday night, FSU Ole Miss, and it started out looking like Ole Miss was going to blow the doors off this game. They had a 28-6 lead. They blow it. FSU comes back and looks great. And one of the most encouraging things was DeAndre Francois, the freshman, drawing the Jameis Winston comparisons. Obviously, this kid, if he's going to be legit, combined with all the other talent that FSU has, they really might challenge Clemson for that ACC title. What did you see from FSU in that first game?
Well, obviously, it was a tale of two halves in that game, and I think everybody in the nation, all the writers, were very nervous because everybody pretty much had it set up where it was going to be an inevitable meeting of the unbeaten Clemson going up against the unbeaten Florida State. And I think Florida State in that second half, you have to love the composure that they showed, especially behind a freshman quarterback like Francois. And I think it's so promising for college football to just have these young guys. We talked about Texas with Shane Boucher. Obviously now Francois, the performance that he put together, having these young guys who just look unfazed. I mean, he put together some deep balls. He has the athleticism. It's exactly what Jimbo Fisher wants. It's exactly what he's had. And when you have a team and he recruits as well as anybody in the nation, and you have talent in all these key areas, the one place you need to have it the most is at quarterback. And I think we all come away feeling pretty confident about that position for Florida State after their first game.
But are we as confident for Ole Miss? Chad Kelly got a lot of praise coming into this season, one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the SEC, and a lot of people felt like he could have this team in contention up against Alabama, up against LSU and Tennessee, all those teams that we really liked coming into the year. But first half really good, second half terrible. Was this a case of Ole Miss playing a very good team, or was that second half more of a realistic representation of what Ole Miss and Chad Kelly is?
Yeah, that's the tough thing, and it's Chip Kelly, the thing we saw last season too. It's that love-hate thing. In the first half, he put some balls on the money that make you think this is an NFL throw. This is an NFL guy. But then he goes and he regresses later in that game, and it's the thing that drives you crazy because Chad Kelly has the arm strength, he has the accuracy, he has all these intangibles that make you fall in love with a guy like him. But then when he regresses in the later parts of the game, when it matters most, well, that makes you question him and his leadership as a football player. Ole Miss is obviously a program where the NCAA is probing them for a lot of things. Laramie Tunzel kind of maybe rang a couple bells, and then that opened up and rang a couple more bells. So Ole Miss is certainly not in the best position you want to be in right now, but look, they're in the SEC. They have a quarterback. They have a coach in Hugh Freeze who's done a lot of good things. So I don't think this is a loss that could totally unfaze them. They play Alabama again in 2 weeks' time, so we know what they've done against Alabama as of late. So if they get a good performance off of them, who knows? It could really save their season.
Yeah, well, week 2 is not going to supply these big marquee matchups, but week 1 was great. That is it for the recap. It feels great to be back. Jersey Joe Archino, Kevin Walsh. We'll see you guys next week.